Hi and welcome everyone to the fourth episode of the XPRT Community livestream. Today we have a very special episode, as you can see in the background. We are in a special location. This week is DevDays Europe, a conference in Lithuania, in Vilnius. And I was speaking there myself, and I found some of the other speakers there to record a stream with me. So we're currently in the conference hotel in on a balcony because that was the only spot we could find where we could record this. And today we will talk about Monolith versus microservices because, all the speakers we have here are all experts on building either microservices or monoliths or both. So, let's first introduce yourself. Allard.
Yeah, so my name is Allard Buijze. I am the CTO and founder of Axonic, and we are the creators and maintainers of the Axon framework, which is a CQRS and event sourcing framework for the JVM. So that's my background. I've been doing consultancy for about 9 years, and that led to the creation of Axon framework and later on the company as well. That's my background.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Joop. I'm working at Procurios. We have a big PHP monolithic application where we handle customer relationship management with a lot of add-ons like mailings and invoicing and subscriptions and so on and so on.
Okay.
Jan de Vries. I'm a cloud solution architect working at 4.net, doing a lot of stuff in the cloud with Azure, and I get to see a lot of monolithic and microservices projects, or at least they say it's some microservice solution.
Okay, you're all speakers at the event. Could you quickly say what you're talking about?
Yeah, so my talk was about using Axon as a pragmatic approach to building microservices. Not so much that Axon is required to be pragmatic, but more of the approach that we stimulate as Axonic on building microservices. That was my talk, including some live coding.
Okay.
And my talk was about how you could structure your monolithic application into separated modules or bounded context, and how you can use event-driven architecture to let other parts of the system know what happened on one particular part of the system.
Okay.
My talk is about the same content as yours, because I'm also discussing the matter of how to design your services and don't let them talk to each other directly, but separate it via some kind of a messaging bus.
Okay. What we normally do is we have a number of challenges for you, and you either answer with yes or no, or you choose one of the options. First you just choose an answer, and after that we can elaborate after everyone answered the question. And sorry about some background noise, we're actually on a balcony and there's dogs and cars passing by in the background, but that's what you get when you do this in a strange country and a strange place. So the first obvious question, microservices or monoliths?
Yes. Monoliths.
Monoliths?
Monolith. First a proper monolith, then maybe microservices.
Okay. Yeah, I agree totally. Monoliths.
Yeah. So monoliths will be the new hype for the next year.
Yeah.
I generally hope they will. Yes, because in my opinion, and that was part of my talk today. Most of our monoliths don't appear as a nice piece of stone somewhere, like a solid piece that will stand there for a long time. Most of them decay into a big ball of mud.
Yeah.
And I always show a little ball of dung with a dung beetle on top of it to display that. And if the approach that we take on building a monolith leads to the big ball of mud, then increasing the number of deployment units and then calling it microservices is not going to help us with anything. So before we move to microservices, we first need to prove to ourselves, not so much as an entire community, but within every organization, prove first that you can build this structured monolith. And I hope that's the hype.
There's so much additional complexity you have to take into account when going distributed. And when just inside one little process, you can just, keep yourself busy with the simple stuff, like maintaining a proper monolith.
Okay.
Architecture is really important to have. A good structured monolith will lead up to maybe good structured microservices. But if you can't structure a monolith properly, your microservice will just end up like another big pile of mud, only distributed.
Yeah, a distributed monolith,
Yeah.
which is even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a bit of nuance that probably we need to add here. So it's not so much either a monolith or microservices. There's a very broad space in between.
Sure.
And there's always forces that drive you to separate to carve a piece out of the monolith. So it might very well be 2 monoliths, or maybe 3. But not in the hundreds as you sometimes see them, and definitely not from let's start a new project. Okay, which 200 microservices will we create, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's a good bridge to the next challenge. Microservices say nothing about size.
True.
Yeah. True.
Originally true.
Okay, elaborate further.
In the perception, so we do a lot of let's say Twitter volume reading. So we don't read more than 120 characters. Okay, nowadays a bit more, but so generally with anything that becomes a hype in our industry, we stop reading after the title.
Yeah.
So microservices, unfortunately, to many people has meant 2 pizza teams. Need to be recreated, recreatable in 2 weeks. I don't know what. There's all these measures that came out of them, and personally, I don't think they make any sense. So I would say no, they don't. There's no size, but because they're called micro, people tend to use it that way. That's why I was a bit reluctant in answering.
Yeah, but what is your personal opinion, right? Because I see this happening as well. Like, it's a big trend currently, doing microservices, but I think it's going the wrong way, where people just carve up their monolith into a distributed monolith.
Yeah.
And most of your sessions were all about, please don't do that.
Yeah.
I would say rather make them too large than too small. It's easier to cut them up when done correctly, right? There's a lot of dangers there, but I think it's easier to cut them up in smaller pieces than combine them later on.
Yeah, exactly.
I once heard a nice quote from someone very smart, and he stated, microservices or monoliths don't have anything to do with size, but with the number of dependencies they have. A microservice should ideally only have one dependency to some third party or whatever, and a monolith most of the time has multiple dependencies, therefore it's a monolith. So a microservice probably only has a dependency to some kind of messaging system, and of course the HTTP, the iOS, and an internal database, but nothing more. And a monolith most of the time has dozens and dozens of dependencies.
Okay. Next one is services should not communicate directly with each other.
Yeah.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I want to play the depends card, but I agree with yes, they shouldn't communicate with each other.
And why would you want to do the it depends card?
Well, sometimes you need the actual real-time data, so you can't be eventually consistent for some specific cases. So you need to do a get to some owner of some owner service. So you do a get and have the actual data of that moment. But it depends. Most services can, or most solutions can work with offensive consistency. Which you get for free when you don't distribute it.
Okay.
But if you need actual data from another service, are your bounded context right at the moment? At that moment?
That depends.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. But
I like to take it from 2 angles. So when you develop software, I don't think you should have any code anywhere that says, "Hey, that service, you do that now." And then give me and then I wait for the response. So definitely not synchronous, right? But even with asynchronous, you should not point to a server and say, "Give me that response." And at Axonic, we have the opinion that even with service discovery, that's actually what you're doing. You're just naming the service and then resolving a URL for it. You're still pointing at a service, even though it's not the physical quote-unquote location. But when it comes to runtime, I think it does make sense for services to communicate directly, as long as the way the connection is set up is completely dynamic in the sense of auto-discovery. And it's fine to have a direct line that could it would benefit performance if there's a direct line. But I think it's a very bad idea to have services depend on each other in how they're built as in code.
Okay. Yes. Next one is containers are a must when building microservices.
No.
No?
No, definitely not.
No? Well, you see, when you just read all the blogs and all the hypes, you see microservices and containers often going together. Kubernetes is a big hype at the moment. You see all those things linked to each other, but technically it doesn't have to, right?
It's I had to think about it for a second before answering the question, but it was the word must that triggered me to saying no, because I think there's a lot of benefits in using containers. I mean, you put a real clear boundary around a piece of process, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. And make it reproducible on different environments, mostly. But it's not a requirement for microservice. You can just launch a couple of services on the same machine, but you'll not have the nice level of isolation that you would have with containers.
Yeah. Okay, then the last challenge, Netflix or Spotify?
Can we start on the other side?
Yeah, yeah, you can start.
I like Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, me too. I like Netflix, so. But
yeah, first answer and then you can elaborate.
I'll go for Netflix as well.
Yeah. Okay. So why Netflix?
Because I have a subscription to it, and I haven't gotten a subscription to Spotify anymore. But I like the Spotify development model, or at least from what I know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing, so that's cool. And the only thing I know of Netflix is they have a Chaos Monkey doing stuff, but that's about it. So their internal development, how they do stuff, I'm not very clear on this.
Okay.
Well, same for me. I have a Netflix subscription, but not on Spotify. I've used Spotify, but I don't like it because I can't listen to complete CDs. I have to create
your own playlist.
my own playlist. So yeah.
So in terms of watching and listening, I do both. But I once had a very nice conversation with the director of platform engineering of Netflix, and so I asked him the question, like, okay, why? I knew what his talk was going to be at the conference. I was responsible for the track he was in. So I asked him, you're going to talk. What's your motivation for doing this talk, right? What's the benefit for Netflix? We've got this open source software. Is that going to give you more streaming customers? And he said, no, actually, we want to warn people of the complicated things you'll encounter when doing microservices. I said, but it's funny that when you do that, the side effect is more people use microservices because Netflix does it.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, that's unfortunately the counter effect. But they say, if you venture towards microservices, then at least you will not have the thing that we suffered and still suffer. And that was a remark that stuck with me. They suffer from microservices. They don't manage microservices. The microservices manages the company. Yeah. And they use Chaos Monkey to kind of be in control and hope the building doesn't set on fire when they deploy something new. So it's all about maintaining control. They're not in control. That was
I like this. You say you like Spotify. I like that the answers all relate towards what these companies technically do instead of, well, when you ask this to a normal person, they will just respond about the actual services that they provide. But both Spotify and Netflix have quite an impact on software development in the last few years, and especially Netflix in the microservices area. So Okay.
There's some danger there as well, because I've seen the Spotify model be applied, and
Yeah, it's
there's
actually
some
not a
nice
model.
quotes.
Yeah.
It's it's the Spotify works if you are Spotify.
Yeah.
If
Spotify
you're
model
not, it
only
doesn't.
works if you're Spotify,
Yeah.
and Spotify over like 5 years ago, because they are constantly evolving, and currently they're not using the Spotify model at Spotify. So
So what?
nobody is.
Yeah. If it didn't work, if the Spotify model didn't work for Spotify, then why would it work for you?
Yeah. Okay. So those were the challenges. Well, let's continue the discussion on microservices and monoliths. So where is the biggest decision, in your opinion, on choosing between a monolith or building microservices? When should I choose one?
I think we could choose it right here, right now, for
Yeah.
every project.
Okay.
And
Yeah, let's do it.
Start with the monolith.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do file a new project, you always start monolith and
Yeah, start one first. Learn, especially with new products, you don't know what you're going to build.
Yeah.
Nobody gets a big pile of specifications. Say, this is exactly what I want, and I will promise you, the next 5 years they will not change.
yeah.
If you get that, you
We
might
believed
be
that
able-
like 10, 20 years ago, but that's we don't do that anymore, right? Yeah.
So yeah, I would go for monolith right away. Start with a small team, like not so much a superhero team, but some different disciplines in one team, and then slowly expand. I've seen too many projects start with 40 people and fail in a very expensive, painful, and slow way.
Okay. And what are the things that you should take into account to move towards microservices in a later stage, architecture-wise? Or
Of course, making sure your components which you have created aren't coupled, and if they are, make sure. Do they still need this coupling, or is it has happened by accident? And if so, refactor. And otherwise, consider how you can implement this tight coupling to this other services. And of course, you have to do some circuit breakers, retry logic, performance testing of your messaging system, handling of failed events, following a flow of events, which is harder when going distributed. So if a message fails somewhere halfway down a process, why and what other things have failed down the line? So retrying logic, managing operations.
so it starts with setting the right context, right?
Yeah.
The right bounded context.
Yeah.
You'll need to define boundaries anyway,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest challenge in a monolith, and that's a lot easier in microservices, but is safeguarding these boundaries. Because with dot and control space, in most IDEs you can get very far, and you'll find a way. Developers like
namespace.
Yeah.
exactly. People will find the path of least resistance to get
of course,
to do what they want, and the service is right there. I can just call it. No, because there's a
Yeah.
boundary. Where is the boundary? It's not there, right? So
Yeah.
it's on the wall somewhere in the architect's office.
Someone drew a line there.
Somebody said there's a line, and you should not cross it.
There is some awesome tooling in the IDEs, but no one is using it. From my experience, I've never seen someone use the architecture design tools in Visual Studio to define the boundaries, because no one knows it's there. That's a bummer. And
now they
it's
do.
hard to now they do. And it's hard to maintain, because today we have 5 different boundaries, and tomorrow a 6th. So you have to draw a new line in the architecture diagram. No one is doing this because we're busy shipping stuff.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that you're all working in different technology stacks, right? So you're in the .NET space, you're in PHP space, and you're in the Java world. So I think architectural-wise, we were building the same kind of applications, right? So how do you stop people when you're starting with the monolith? How do you stop people crossing these boundaries?
So in the Java space, you basically you have a few options. Nowadays, there's the module system in Java, where you can be very explicit about what you want to export and what not. But that is all. That doesn't make it easier to separate it into a separate service later on. Sometimes people ask me, what's the big thing Axon gives you, for example? And while it's originally created as a CQRS and domain-driven design framework, or at least framework to help you implement using those principles, nowadays I would say the most important feature of Axon is the abstraction layer that you get. So all communication between any component, whether that component is local or distant, is through messages. Mm-hmm. And we define messages in 3 categories. You've got commands, events, and queries. So if a command you send to change, if you want to change something in the system, an event is just a publication, something happened, it might be interesting or not. Yeah. And the query is, I have a need for information and I need an answer from some component. And we found that if you stick to those boundaries and keep the messaging explicit, then any violation of the architect's line becomes much more obvious and is easier to safeguard as well.
Okay, how does it work for you?
Well, in PHP you have no such thing as private classes, so everything is accessible from the entire system. So in the PHP land, it really comes down on what type of programmer you are, because we have also the globals. So if I want, I can put every dependency in a global variable and access it throughout my application whenever I want. So at our company, we have some strict rules about when, on which points in the application you can access those services that are within our monolith. And most of the times it are controllers or plugins or any other entry point of your specific module boundary. Okay. So only there is the point where you can collect other services, and from there on you inject them in everything that you need from there on. Yeah,
you rely a lot on peer reviews as well when you review your code. Then
and to be honest, sometimes I skip that because I'm a bit of a hurry. So I need it in a certain moment, and I've not enough time to do it properly. So I just type it in there because it's PHP and I can. But the first moment I have time, I refactor it in a proper way.
Yeah,
it's a bit cheeky. Yeah,
did
we all promised that, right?
Yeah, I did. No, I'm very strict to that. But some of my colleagues aren't. Yeah.
Okay, Jan?
We're mostly using code reviews and educating the other developers, the team members, and everybody's favorite, documentation. We almost never write documentation, but nowadays, because we're doing a bit microservices, we feel the need to have more and better documentation, how systems communicate with each other, or why are they sending messages, which service picks up what are they doing, and why has it been designed this way. So documentation, code reviews, and educating the new developers.
Okay. Next question. So, when building microservices, should you start building all the stuff yourself? Do you use libraries? Where should you start?
Well, my answer can be pretty short. You definitely want to use now. So
you're wearing a t-shirt.
Right? Not just some frameworks. There's specific frameworks you should use, but no.
In what areas do you need help, and what areas do you build yourself?
So my dream for our industry is for developers to focus on what sets their employer or the company they work for apart from their competition. And that is not in infrastructure code. The plumbing is the same for everybody, and that's literally how Axon got started. I was doing an experiment, and I was writing a lot of lines of plumbing code, and I just put them online on a repository so that everybody could use them. And that's the point where not everybody yet, but many people started using them, and then only then it turned into a framework. And I think it's a utter waste of time, very precious time, to be honest, if you build everything yourself. If you have this not invented here syndrome, then you're probably just a waste of your customers' money.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. If you can use a framework or of any kind to use any infrastructure code, yeah.
Yeah, normally when doing my evening projects, I write my own because I want to understand how this stuff is working. But when working for a customer, definitely go with the default framework because you get so many features you will need. Maybe not today, but you will need them in 6 months from now, because then the stuff is in production and you need to maintain it and make sure the customers of your customer still get the stuff done.
It does require some due diligence, right? Before using a framework, you want to check whether does it do what I want it to do, or does
Yeah.
it force me
And
somewhere?
future,
Is a future that the framework imposes on me, and that could be a very short future if the framework is not maintained, or a long one. But does it force me in some direction where I want to go or not? And that's
a lot of these frameworks, I guess, are opinionated, right? And doing services in kind of way. Is that?
Yeah, I guess so, because it's a framework, so you have to use the framework. It's not like a library which you can just plug in and out. So you have to conform to a specific framework, and you can do some abstraction on it if you really want to, but most of the time you won't switch frameworks, so that doesn't make sense in my opinion. So yeah, you have to conform to it.
You should also check the amount of coupling that your code has on the framework. So make that, that's something we are working on as much as possible. Preferably, I would see no framework code in our customers' code, just because it's there on runtime and we'll use it, but otherwise not. That's not completely possible yet, but that's a good sign as well. So if you notice that on a framework, you're extending their classes, calling a lot of their methods, realize that if you want to get rid of the framework, you're going to have a lot of open wounds in your classes.
You only want them to use your client, your XMIQ client.
Well, actually, we just say build an aggregate. You've got methods in there. Some of these methods will need to respond to commands. Some of them are used for event sourcing. If you want to use event sourcing, if not, then not. And you just create these methods and annotate them. So you have a dependency on an annotation, and there's one method that you probably need to depend on to publish an event. That's the only thing. It's still, in our opinion, too much coupling. Preferably, you want to have a declarative, preferably in the language. Just say, hey, here's an event I want to publish, and then whatever implementation is there should do it for me. But we don't have that yet.
That's a pretty fancy approach.
That would be
okay. I heard some terms already during the interview. So CQRS, event sourcing. How important is it?
CQRS taught me to do domain-driven design right, and the more I try to do plain good old domain-driven design, the more I find myself applying CQRS to some places. Not. Of course, you can take a dogmatic approach to CQRS and say, well, full CQRS, but I see at least fragments of it everywhere and being very useful. Event sourcing is a different story. That's mostly that's another choice you should make. Often not made, just like the microservices and monoliths. It's not a proper choice. But if history is important, and in many companies it is, if history is important, then seriously consider event sourcing. That's my.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Separating your commands and queries is a really powerful technique to separate your boundaries as well. And within your application, you just have something, I want to do this, it happens or not, and I let the application know that it happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, CQRS all the way.
Yeah, let's speak up a bit, because someone's making an awful noise downstairs.
CQRS all the way. Event sourcing, not so much. I like event sourcing. I have yet to see the first project actually using it properly and it being actually necessary and useful for the customer. Because most of the time, a regular database data store will suffice, and you don't need this massive event store having.
I'll send you an invitation soon.
Cool. I look forward to it.
Okay. Next topic, and I think we're almost out of time. So let's make it the last topic is deployment strategies. Is there anything you should take into account? Going more on this first, and then into microservices.
I would say a hybrid approach. From an Axon perspective, we have no opinion on deployment.
But maybe you do. Maybe your framework doesn't. But
the framework doesn't. So you deploy it the way you think is necessary. But we've seen some really nice deployments where you have a monolith that runs throughout the year. You build new features on the monolith, but every now and then, or at least once a year, once a year, it's Christmas. And if you're in a retail business, for example, you'll have extra load in your systems.
Yeah.
So probably there are some components in your system that you want to increase the volume of, and in that case you can deploy some of these components separately to balance the load for those components, which is only possible if you do what we discussed earlier on services not communicating directly to each other, making sure there's a proper message broker in between, making sure that every component gets the messages it deserves. And I've seen some really nice implementations of these hybrid approaches that were very powerful, because you only expand on what you really need and not anything else.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
To be honest, we deploy multiple times a day, but we run PHP, and PHP doesn't have any compile time, so that's maybe lucky for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it for us.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just doing continuous deployment all day long with some feature flags, and the same goes for monoliths and for microservices, so there's not much of a difference. It's just a service brought up to some app service, and it runs. Of course, you can do some fancy stuff, you know more about this than me, I guess, but yeah, the regular continuous deployment cycle.
Okay. So we would like to end with a final question to you all. Is like, what kind of, do you have any material like blog posts or things people should read or watch that if they want to start building proper monolith applications or microservices, what is like the go-to materials that you need to start looking at?
So we have we organize a conference every year where we have some of our customers explain their journey, and there's actually some very interesting stories in there. Of course, they're our customers, so they relate to Axon, but they're generic enough to be valuable. There's some lessons learned in there, so you don't have to walk into the pitfalls of others. So it's on the Axonic YouTube channel, other than that, I think the domain-driven design book is a pretty good read, even if you plan to go to microservices. It's
second
a
show
good
in a row that
microservices
it's
reference. Make sure you learn what you build before you start building it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I want to go with the DDD book. Start applying some DDD techniques, maybe only the technical side, like the value objects, entities. Get your boundaries right first within your monolith.
Okay.
I want to add, all sessions of this DevDays Europe conference are being recorded and published on InfoQ, so you can watch all of the sessions somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
So you can watch the full sessions of all of us and even more. And a lot of sessions are talking about going monolith first and microservices, and a lot of eventing and messaging and stuff like this. Very interesting.
Okay. Well, thank you all for this interview. I think it was really insightful that, not everyone just jumps on the microservices hype train and really start looking at, do we need microservices, and where's the strength of microservices, and where should we just keep on working in monoliths but then do a proper monolith. Yeah. So, thank you all, and thanks everyone for watching. We will be back next week for sure. I'm trying to arrange some more speakers to do the same as we did today here at DevDays Europe in Vilnius. So maybe we have a stream tomorrow, and otherwise it will just be a regular Tuesday next week. Thanks all for watching.